Welcome to the Circle of Birth podcast. I'm your host and advocate, Ali Kranz. These podcasts are here to gather stories, people and information to better our understanding of the wisdom of birth and how we can reclaim our connections to birth from conception and beyond. You will hear stories not only from Australia but from all over the world, bringing together women, partners, midwives, doulas and all the people that have a birth story to share. So jump right in for this next Circle of Birth story. Welcome to episode 35, and this episode with Jessica I'm really keen to share. It is a birth at 44 weeks and a home birth at that. So one of my greatest interests in my midwifery studies at the moment is looking at estimated due date, the big D-Day, and continually wondering what it would look like for many women had they not had a 40-week EDD. Anxiety, inducing labour at home, methods of doing that, booked in for inductions, trying to get into labour on a trampoline, ingesting castor oil. These are all common things that we do post our 40-week due date. And I've heard the stories. So many women have been put into unnecessary stress, and the biggest is that they suddenly think their body is not working. So this story will run through what the 40 to 44 week period can look like. Jessica shows great understanding of her body while still engaging with her midwife and other support networks around her to make sure that the decision she makes is hers and she trusted the process. Please share this story around, as I bet we all know someone that's coming into or past the 40-week mark. So enjoy. Hi, Jessica. I am so honoured to have you on the show. I was going to say welcome then, but I'm welcoming you into this show. So welcome to the Circle of Birth, and thank you so much for making this space at 7 p.m. in the evening on a Monday night, which can be quite manic in some places, and I know what it is here with my kids running around. So appreciate the time and welcome.
Okay, thank you. Hi.
Did you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your family? And I found you on a home birth group.
Yep.
And I got so excited when I saw the title of your story, which was a birth story after a 44-week long pregnancy. And one of my little gripes at the moment is these estimated due dates and what impact this has on women. So I would just love to share this story. And I know you've got 3 other girls.
Yes.
So you've got a tribe of 4 girls.
That's right.
But I would love to focus on this story, especially as a 44-week pregnancy.
Yeah. Okay. So I am 29 years old. I turn 30 in a couple of months, and I have 4 daughters. I had my first daughter when I was turning 20, and she was an induction. She was induced at a hospital for post dates 10 days after my due date. And it was a pretty horrific experience. I had postnatal depression and post-traumatic stress after that birth experience. It was just something I was completely unprepared for. And basically, it took me a good 6 months to even start bonding with my baby at that point. And when I started healing, I investigated home birth because there was just no way I was going to go through that again. And so that kind of started my journey in terms of better experiences. And then I had my second daughter was born at home at 43 weeks one day in the water at home, and my third daughter was an hour and a half labour at 42 and a half weeks, and my fourth daughter, third home birth, was born at 44 weeks at home.
Amazing.
An incredible 2.5 hour beautiful labour. So yeah.
Jessica, can we just recap back to birth number 1 with your first daughter? What was the initial point where you knew that you needed to get some help, and how did you get from having this traumatic experience into having a home birth? What sort of help did you get along the way to do your healing?
Okay. So after being diagnosed with postnatal depression and going on medication and just kind of starting to come out of the depths of the black, I saw a psychiatrist for 6 months, and that helped me to kind of at least function. And after that, I was able to kind of think and reflect about, okay, what decisions had I made regarding this birth, and what were the things that I would have done differently. When it came to my first birth, I felt completely unempowered. I felt like a piece of meat. I felt like a number on the system. I felt really invisible as a woman and as a person, and I didn't want to go through that again. And so I actually found out about home birth through going to a baby expo and reading about Home Birth Queensland, which I actually ended up facilitating support circles for about 5 years down the line. But, yeah, I found out about it just through a flyer, and it sounded really amazing and really out there. And at the time, my husband was a pharmacy student, and I'm pretty alternative. My husband and I are pretty opposite in terms of that stuff. So I kind of took the flyer home to him and went, what about this? And he was like, what? But the more I started researching it, the more it made sense. So I started going along to Home Birth Queensland meets, and I met other women who'd birthed at home, and then I kind of decided that actually this is what I want. And so that's when I went about interviewing a midwife and planning for my first home birth.
They're a big supportive network up in Queensland, aren't they? I've heard, Home Birth Queensland.
Yeah, they're amazing. I think it's kind of died down a little bit. They're still very active, I think, but I live on the Sunshine Coast now, and so the Brisbane support group, I'm not sure if they meet as regularly, but they had this, I don't even know if it's active anymore either. They had this amazing magazine called Down to Birth, and it was full of amazing birth stories, home birth stories, and I got a copy of that at the expo and just read them, and it was just really inspiring and so different from my experience. So I kind of got hooked then.
Yeah, that must have been a nice thing to sort of, be at that expo and just read those stories and that positive sort of side when you're sort of coming through into your own journey.
Yeah, definitely. It was just completely opposite to what I'd gone through, and I didn't even realise, to be honest, that it was possible. I think I was pretty naive and didn't really. People tell women, you don't have to. You just let it go. You can't plan everything. Well, you can, but I kind of had to learn that through the second time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So heading into number 4 then. So you've got 3 girls, and your pregnancy, by the looks of it, I'm reading here your beautiful story, which we'll definitely link to on the podcast. I can't even pronounce this word. So you had a fairly normal pregnancy, and you're relieved not to have hyperemesis.
Hyperemesis ovarium.
Yes.
So
what is that?
So it's like horrific morning sickness that just doesn't bugger off ever. It was just, I was with my third daughter, I was really unwell with it, and it required I was literally vomiting 12 times a day, and I was spewing 12 times a day until I was about 36 weeks pregnant. I lost about 9 kilos. I had about 4 trips to the hospital to get intravenous fluids because I couldn't keep anything down. I was just so unwell. It was just horrific. So didn't have that again with the 4th baby, thank God.
Gosh, that must have been a relief. Yeah, I have actually heard of that now that you mention it. Yeah. So it's usually just fluid loss a lot of the concern is with that one, isn't it?
Yeah, and you can't function because you literally are throwing up all day. Like, people would say to me, have ginger. Dude, I couldn't even keep down like an ice cube. So it was just ridiculous.
Yeah. And did you find support around you for that? Was there other women going through it that you could reach out to, or herbs or anything that helped, or it was just nothing?
To be honest, it was just one of those things. Like, I ended up taking ondansetron. I think it was a drug that I took. It was like a wafer. It's to help with severe. It's actually given to chemotherapy patients under the advice of my doctor, and that settled it. But it was super expensive, and to be honest, it was just a matter of writing it out and staying hydrated and just writing it out. And like the best way that it kind of went was when I finally gave birth. So bad. Yeah. People knew about it. People don't know about HG, and so that's really tricky because people, they thought I was exaggerating.
Perhaps I'll link in, if we'll talk after the show and see if you've got any resources that we can put on the blog for people if they're interested in finding out. 32 weeks, we'll head up to that. So pregnancy went well for number 4. Do you want to sort of just briefly tell us about your blessing way and what that looked like for you, and what for women that don't know what's involved with a blessing way, and then just, start telling your story and head into your birth story. And
absolutely, that sounds good. So I had my blessing way at 32 weeks. I've had three blessing ways. I had a baby shower with my first daughter, and I had blessing ways with my other three. The reason I had them was because blessing ways are really about the woman. Baby showers tend to be about babies buying or baby crap, and I was kind of, with my fourth child, I really didn't need anything, and even with my second child, it really appealed to me to have a blessing way, because it was about nurturing the mother and preparing the mother and giving the mother support as she journeys on towards the end of her pregnancy, towards meeting her baby and going through labour and stuff. And it's about kind of being encircled with support and encircled with love, and having women wisdom behind you, kind of backing you and making you feel like you're part of something. So I had a blessing way. I've had all my blessing ways at New Farm Park in Brisbane. It's where I got married, and it's just a really special place to me. And we just kind of gathered on the grass with some friends and cushions. And what we did is I asked everyone to write blessings for my birth, so wishes that they had for my birth on pieces of paper, and then they were read aloud. And then I actually put those blessings on the wall when I was in labour and towards the end of my pregnancies. And when I was feeling insecure or doubting myself, I'd just kind of draw on that strength, and it was really helpful and really nice. I asked women to bring close friends just to bring a bead to make a birthing necklace, and it was that they brought a bead that signified something special to them or had special meaning, and then it kind of all together, it was like a circle of power, I guess, or circle of like love. It was really special. And then we kind of just shared little bits about ourselves and as women, and it was a collective kind of a wisdom. And just I had a friend organise a meal roster for me as well, so I didn't have to really cook for 3 weeks after my babies, which was amazing. And that was just really beautiful. And so my 40th week of pregnancy rocked up, and I was my girls were on school holidays at that point, and I knew that there was no way that I was going to have a baby then. Like, I just knew that. Yeah. I don't know. I just couldn't. I think for me, it's a lot about timing. In my experience, like with my third daughter, my waters broke within half an hour of my other two girls going to sleep, so it was very much my baby, and my body's just kind of, this is just a bit crazy, I'm just going to wait. And it's amazing how the body just has this ability to just really hold off until the right time. And so I knew that, like, there was no way I was going to give birth anytime soon. So by the time they went back to school, I felt pretty good. Like, I felt tired, and I really didn't see any of my friends over the holidays. Usually helps me with the holidays, wrangling 3 kids at that point. I kind of just stayed really close to home, and I really kind of limited who I saw, because I don't like being asked when I'm still pregnant, by randoms, when are you having the baby, or how far are you twins, or whatever. Like, that shit just is not helpful. So
yeah, it drives you up the wall at the end, doesn't it?
Yeah, and so if you can imagine with a fourth pregnancy too, there's always the adage, 4 babies, and so.
Yeah. Hey, so how were you mentally going into having a fourth child? What was that looking like for you at this stage of the pregnancy?
I'm feeling pretty ready. Like, my third child was the one that pretty much not broke me, but kind of made me kind of throw my hands up in the air and go, I actually have no control over what I'm doing. I give up and surrender. Like,
wow, that's interesting.
Who kind of was just like, okay, we're completely outnumbered as parents. I just have to trust now. And you don't sweat the small stuff, because you just can't. So you just have to really just flow, because it's just, there's no point fighting it. So yeah, I felt really, in terms of the fourth, I'd always really wanted four kids, and I actually always thought I'd have 4 daughters. So it just seemed really normal, and really, wrangling a toddler while being pregnant, I was used to it. So I was feeling really good in terms of that sort of stuff. But I was having weekly appointments with my midwife, and my baby was fully engaged, and I could feel her head really low, and I was having like regular Braxton Hicks like over the last month regularly. They'd come up, and I'd noticed them, so I knew that my body was getting ready to give birth, and I just knew that there was no way I was going to go into labour when the girls were at home. So I was just, walking on the beach, and I was doing lots of talking to my baby as well when she was in my tummy at that point, and I was kind of saying to her, I'm ready when you are, and we were ready to meet her, and I couldn't wait to tell her and show her this place and that sort of stuff. And I found going outside and being in nature was really comforting, because it was just constant, and it was something that was just there, and it was nice and distracting rather than being in a house with 3 kids and really huge. It's not fun. So, yeah.
I do like in the story how you called her belly dweller.
Yeah. Definitely. She was just kind of, my body kind of exactly knew what was going on, and look, it just felt really familiar, and I could kind of, I remember lying on the couch and feeling her foot like rocking up and down my belly and watching it, and I kind of didn't feel urgent. Like, women get to 40 weeks and I actually was totally just like, yep, traveling along, la-di-da. Like, it was just really normal for me. So,
and
yeah.
So your relationship with your midwife, was she the same one for your other 2 home births or a different one?
No, she wasn't. We moved up the Sunshine Coast when my 3rd daughter was about 2.5, and so we 18 months, 1.5. Yeah. So no, I'd had my same midwife for my other 2 home births, and I found a different home birth midwife for this one, and she was local. She was right around the corner. I had a feeling that I'd have a quick labour. I asked her all the questions in my head that I could think of, really critiqued her, and really wanted to get to know her feelings about post-birth, post-dates, and I really wanted to know how she felt about, trusting the woman rather than going by numbers and going by dates. And when she told me that she'd had a 44-week pregnancy that she looked after before, I was kind of like, yeah. And she was my midwife was amazing. She knew the system and knew how to play it. So I felt like even if it came down to something unplanned or whatever, I could trust her to navigate it really well. So,
yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? It's kind of like she was destined for you in a way, that she's served another woman that's gone to 44 weeks, but someone that you can trust, that's going to look after you in that sense, to get the checks if you need and have that trust, but that can navigate that system to protect you essentially. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Her contacts, and she kind of knew, and I felt like I trusted her, and I liked that she had a network of people that she trusted and knew within the system too. So I kind of felt like if it got to a longer pregnancy or something, I wouldn't be kind of in the dark stabbing around going, what the heck, what's going on? And I knew that I would still have a good experience kind of no matter how it ended up being.
Yeah.
So when I woke up and I was still 43 weeks pregnant, my husband had arranged to take his leave from about that point. From about 42.5 weeks, he kind of decided that he's just going to be at home from that point. And it was actually really nice, because usually in the past his leave has always started when I've gone into labour, because who the hell knows when I'm going to have a baby, So it was actually, I was worried that it would stress me having him home, but it took a weight off, because I felt like I could just be with my baby and focus on me, and he would kind of pick up the other stuff and do the parenting of the other 3. And so that was like a pressure off. But I remember when I woke up at 43 weeks and I was feeling really sad and confused, because I was still pregnant, and I was internally thinking to myself, why is this baby not coming? Why do longer pregnancies have to be normal for me? Why are women having their babies at 40 weeks on the dot? Why do I have to wait? And I knew all the answers to that, because I know that that's just how I cook them. I just cook them for longer. But it was just still a bit of a head fuck, because it was just why? It was just really hard to kind of turn off the thinking brain and turn on the trusting brain,
Yeah. I could just imagine that too, that moment. It's kind of like a sort of semi-transition between your mind and your body, and it's like,
exactly.
Why me?
It's so easy, and it's like a battle. It's like I am trusting, but this is shit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is so crap. And like I love labor, but I don't like pregnancy. I find it really uncomfortable. I get massive, and my bladder was like I was peeing all night long, and I couldn't sleep. And my poor husband copped so much shit from me as well, because I was just like an emotional mess. I was crying, and then, you know, having a rant, and then crying, and then walking, and it was just completely. It was a bit nuts. So
sounds like a surefire way just to completely surrender, doesn't it? To test you as a person, to release everything and just get it all out.
Other choice. And I would have tantrums in the hope that I'd go into labour. Like, fine, I'm going to have a tantrum now. And then it was nothing. And I was like, oh, are you kidding me? So, but I think like there is so much with women, and I know with me, there is so much stress that comes from the doing. Like when you're pregnant, I'm just going to try this to get the baby out, or I'm just going to try this to get this out, or maybe this will help. And that actually causes more stress because you get so focused on what you have to do, and when it doesn't work, you feel like you're not working properly, and you feel like you're broken, and then you kind of end up internally going, what's going on? Whereas when you just kind of go, you know what, fuck it, I can't do anything, whatever, it'll happen or it won't, whatever. Like it's just much easier. It's gentler on the woman because it removes the responsibility, and it removes the attachment of it's something that's directly my doing, you know? So
yeah, there's so many women out there that would just be going through this probably right now and just feeling that inadequacy, and it's really horrible when it needs to be re-looked at. It's just
absolutely.
It's my blood boiling.
Yeah, oh God, don't worry. Don't tell me about. I completely get it. So, yeah. When I was about a few days past my 43 weeks, so that was my longest period that I'd been pregnant. My midwife suggested, and I agreed to because I was ready, to have a biophysical profile ultrasound done to check on the cord flow, placenta functioning, fluids, and just a general check on the baby. And I have to say, like, I was nervous going into the appointment because, you know, what if it showed something wrong? What if people doing it pressured me to get induced or gave me a hard time for being pregnant? But I went with my husband and my beautiful toddler, and we went to the scan, and I was happily surprised that the amount I had a really respectful sonographer. I lay back, and my large belly literally didn't fit on the screen. Oh, I was so big, they'd never had a 43-week pregnancy on their thing, and the dates were like invalid or something. So that was really funny.
Cannot compute.
Yeah, no, it does not compute. And like my belly didn't even fit on the screen. It was hilarious. But you know, everything was perfect. You know, the cord flow was beautiful. The placenta was perfect. There was no signs of distress. There was heaps of fluid in there. And I got to see my baby's face as well. She asked me if I'd like to see my baby's face, and I took one out. We got a photo printed out, and it was so cute. And I actually put the face of the baby beside my birth pool where it was blown up, and it was really nice to kind of have my little one kind of going, "Hi, you know, I'm good," and everything was fine. So And
was that a 3D one or the 4D one? Like when you see all the
it was a 3D one. It wasn't a one. Those ones can be a bit freaky, but like the 3D. So and it's really like I'd only had scans at 19 weeks. That's the only scan I do. So I hadn't seen my baby, like seen her for like 20 weeks or something. So it was really lovely to kind of to see that. And the receptionist told me as well that, you know, she commended me for waiting. And I felt really validated, and I felt like a fog had shifted because I knew that everything was fine. But then when you actually can see it, like, and there's documented evidence that everything is fine, it kind of really helped me to kind of keep on keeping on, and it helped me stay on track and feel focused to just continue to surrender.
Yeah.
My midwife suggested doing at that point. She suggested doing a stretch and sweep because I was having Braxton Hicks pretty regularly. And look, I've had one of those when I was pregnant with my first daughter, and it was not enjoyable at all. But the situation was really different this time because my stretch and sweep that I had with my oldest daughter, it was with someone that I didn't know, and I kind of had no idea what I was in for. But this time I knew my midwife, and the circumstances were a lot different, and it was at home and it was private, and so I consented to that. And I kind of got a bit more Braxton Hicks going on, but it kind of fizzled out. And then I remember waking up and I texted my midwife. She had one more trick in her book. She had some homeopathic tincture, and it was kind of her last trick in the book, really. Like, it was one of her last things that she was like, I'm kind of running out of ideas here.
What tincture was that?
I actually don't remember. Yeah. It was just one to kind of, I think it was one to not induce but encourage labour or something. And so I took it, and it kind of didn't even really make a dent. And so I remember waking up the following morning, and I was feeling really tired and pissed off because I was like, oh, my God. So everything's all good, but I've tried a few things to kind of see if it's going to help at all, and nothing was really working. So I went to visit my chiropractor, because I'd seen a chiropractor all through my pregnancy, like weekly and then fortnightly and then weekly, and then like every second day, like, hello, I'm still pregnant. My midwife told me that on that day that she was pretty busy. So that was actually kind of good, because it kind of meant that I just had to kind of be with my shit and just kind of not have anyone to kind of, I just had to do this. Like, I just had to be with it, and I had to really just surrender. So I was still, alternating between being completely shitty and surrendering, but it was really good. And I went home, and I had like random surges. Like, I'd been having random Braxton Hicks fairly often, and I kind of ignore them because I'm kind of like, it's just, I kind of think of Braxton Hicks like a big warm-up for the uterus. It's like a big muscle, and so it's like getting ready for the final race. It's kind of the body's way of warming up. But I felt like my body was kind of teasing me a bit, and I felt under pressure, but it wasn't from my midwife and it wasn't from anyone else. It was just some sort of weird stuff that was going on. My husband then suggested to me that there was some sort of mental block preventing me from entering labour land, something that I suggested, of which I disputed quite loudly, and I'd done everything. Like, I felt like I'd seriously was hitting a wall. I was like, I'd done everything. I'd worked on my emotional blocks. I'd been in nature. I'd meditated. I'd been to the bloody chiro. I've done everything, and it was not me. Like, and so at this point, it was like, this is my pregnancy and me being still pregnant. This is not me. Like, this is not about me. This is my baby and my body, but it's not something that I'm having control over. So I remember waking up the following morning and my body woke me with a rock hard belly, which is usually what was happening. And I kind of had gentle surges every 10 minutes or so. My midwife messaged me and told me that because I was still pregnant, we'd need to consult with the hospital. So this was the day that I was 44 weeks pregnant. And I knew in my mind that at this point I was completely over being pregnant. It took me until 44 weeks to be completely over being pregnant.
1 month later.
And I'd never reached this. Exactly. And I never really reached this stage before, which is surprising given my long gestations. I knew that I wouldn't consent to any form of chemical induction. My first induction with my daughter still remains one of the most traumatic experiences of my life, something that made me feel powerless, and I suffered postnatal depression and post-traumatic stress from it. And I don't even really remember my first daughter 6 months. It was a blur, and there was just no way I was going there again. So I was happy to arrange to meet with the hospital. I went and arranged to meet a girlfriend while I was still having these surges for breakfast at my local cafe. And then I did op shopping. My in-laws were due to come up at that later on that day and take my other two daughters to their swimming lessons. And my husband went off and did his our fortnightly grocery shopping trip with our toddler. I met my friend at the cafe, and I got teary, and I began to tell her that I didn't care anymore. I didn't care how the baby came out. I just wanted the baby safely out and healthy. I told her that I'd done everything I could possibly think of within my realm of comfort to encourage the baby to come, but it just wasn't coming. So it wasn't about me anymore. It was about my baby. My baby wasn't coming due to a lack of what I was doing or something that I was. clearly my baby just had her own agenda. It was their journey for whatever reason to stay inside me, and it was not mine. I told my friend that I just wanted to book a cesarian so that I can have an end date in my mind, finally some certainty or some control. I actually felt really calm and emotionally ready to birth my baby this way. My dear friend was a fantastic sounding board and a great listener to me as we unloaded. We ate our delicious breakfast, and I said goodbye and I drove home. I realised when I got in the car that I'd missed a phone call from my midwife, so I rang her back. She told me that she'd spoken to the registrar at the hospital and they wanted me to come in for some CTG monitoring. My midwife said that she'd come in with me and they wanted me around 4 o'clock. She also said to me that due to my previous 3 vaginal births, that the hospital would not agree to an elective cesarian and instead wanted to break my waters and induce me. I basically told my midwife, fuck no, that's just not happening. And I was just absolutely not going through that again. I told her that if I did just get my waters broken, there's no guarantee that I'd go into labour that wouldn't end in cesarian anyway, and I just didn't want to go through the traumatic snowballing cycle of monitoring and intervention that would come in a hospital setting. So at this point, I really want...
Sorry, what was their reasoning for that, not letting you have the elective?
I don't know, because hospitals have policies and they'd never had a 44-week pregnant woman, so they didn't know what to do.
Yeah. I just would have thought they would have went straight for the cesarian option as opposed to...
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. I guess they have policies, but basically I told my midwife then that I wanted some control and I just did not consent to that. And she pretty much took my answer on the chin and told me that she'd come over in a few hours to give me a massage with some clary sage oil, and she'd been talking to another midwife that morning who suggested this, and it was effectiveness. And I literally remember scoffing at her going, ha ha, fun, that sounds fine to me, I'll see you later. Thinking, clary sage oil, that sounds like lovely in theory, whatever.
So what were you feeling at, when all this was going on, the phone call and having breakfast with your friend? Did you really, all this sort of distractions going on and all this sort of information's coming in and out of you, in your heart of hearts, or like now you can retrospectively look at this, did you really feel like, did you still have that vision of the home birth in your mind?
To be honest, at this point my priorities shifted. I really just wanted a baby who was alive, and I was willing to forego however the fuck she came out. I just wanted to have a baby who was in my arms, because at that point for me, the most devastating thing I think would be having a 44-week pregnancy and then not getting to have a baby at the end of it. Like, I was just I knew my limits and I knew what I was comfortable with, and I just kind of seriously reached my limit of surrender and hit my wall, and I was just like, you know what? I actually don't give a shit about all that stuff anymore. I just want my baby. So, and I felt confident with it was really cathartic actually for me to say to my midwife, no, I'm not having an induction. I'm not having my waters broken, because I never had that voice for my first daughter. So I got to kind of relive a little bit in a way more positive light what it's like to have consent and control over my body in a way that was like, yeah, I'm the one in control. This is my body and it's my choice. So it was actually okay. I was okay with it.
Yeah, that's great. It's kind of like you've got your support there around you, and you've got that trusted midwife there that's offering you different sorts of information, different sorts of options, and you having that sort of power essentially over your own body, responsible for that birth. And you're like you said, it doesn't matter where it is now. It's like, I need a safe baby. Throw some options at me. No, that's not good enough. Next. Like, that's really cool space to be in. I can see the...
Yeah, it was like I'd really this was my 4th pregnancy, and this was my 4th labour and my 4th, birth and this sort of stuff. I knew what I wanted. I knew what I wouldn't want, and I was totally in a place where I was just like, nope, that's not going to work. This is going to work, and actually you don't have to agree with me because it's not your body.
Exactly.
So it was really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So clary sage, how did that roll out?
On the drive home, I spoke to my belly dweller and I told her that she really should choose to be born at home in the next few hours, and that the baby moon we would share together would be far more restorative and nurturing if she chose to be born at home. I told her that it didn't really matter how she came, but if she didn't come in the next few hours, I'd be getting her out myself. And I told her that I'd reached my absolute limit. I remember talking to her in the car and just saying, been really patient, but if the time is now. And I told her that we'd be able to share a bed in our own home with her sisters around. There'd be no separation or pain, which would be a really different story to that if she chose not to come at home and instead came in hospital. I remember holding my belly and pleading with my belly dweller that she should come today. I'd closed my eyes and I had my hands around my belly and I breathed light and love into her. I remember sitting in the car and literally just kind of visualizing all this stuff. It sounds crazy, but I was just really kind of trying to have one last connection with her, point with her before shit got real. When I got home, I greeted my husband and I told him of the plans to go to hospital. He told me, oh, that was a mistake. He told me that he was tired and that I was tired, but he wanted to have a rest in case we were in for a long night, and I said that was fine. I went and put our toddler to bed for a nap, and I snuggled her around my belly for what would be the last time, but I didn't know it yet. She soon drifted off to sleep, and I enjoyed feeling the weight of her limbs curled around my belly and the smell of her sweet breath in my face. At the same time, feeling the little belly dweller tumbling around inside my belly. I extracted myself from underneath her limbs and I went into our bedroom where the birth pool has been set up. It had been set up for like 6 weeks.
Oh, my gosh. That's a long time.
Oh, it needs a dust now. Yeah. I began packing my bag for hospital. I laid out about 6 changes of clothes for our baby, pajamas for me and blankets, all the necessities along with toiletries. My older girls arrived home from swimming lessons and going to the craft shop with my incredible in-laws. Just before 1 p.m, my midwife arrived as well. I'm really, really close with my mother-in-law, and she was visiting today along with my father-in-law because the following morning at 7, she was going to fly down to Hobart to support her mum who was unwell from an accident and trying to make it back home to the Sunshine Coast.
Aww.
So it was pretty much like I knew that this would be the last time I'd see her before I'd had the baby. And the girls were all off showering, getting chlorine off them, and I woke my husband from his sleep to let him know my midwife was here. She greeted me with a hug and she showed me the oils and wanted to start the massage. So we went into the birthing room, which is in our bedroom, and I knelt down on my knees and she began vigorously rubbing handfuls of undiluted clary sage oil into the sacrum of my back. And within about 7 minutes, I got a lovely surprise by feeling my first real surge, one that required me to actually breathe through it. My midwife kept the massage up, and sure enough, 3 minutes on the dot later, another surge hit. Then I called out for a bucket because I needed to vomit. My husband, who at that point was still walking around in a daze after being woken up from his nap, shot up into action. This being his 4th birth and 3rd home birth to be present for meant that he knew fully well that a definite sign of labour and transition for me actually was vomiting. So he knew immediately. He began conferring with my midwife, who was in a bit of disbelief, and intended to keep rubbing my back about filling up the birth pool. So, like, vomiting for me, like, when I vomit, I get actually really excited because I'm like, oh, this is it. Like, I get really, like, it's really cathartic. I find vomiting when I'm in labour, just that time a few times, really cathartic because it's like I'm releasing everything and I'm completely clearing out. Like, it was really positive for me. And so
you knew at that time when you threw up, you just
when I threw up,
you're like,
shit thing. Yep, I was so excited because I was like, yeah, that was like my definite indicator that okay, this is not just Braxton Hicks that's going to go away in 10 minutes. You know, like this was the real deal. And I remember my mother-in-law walking past as I vomited, and she was a bit unsure of what was going on. To which I quickly managed, I'm in labour, to her face of disbelief. And surely 3 minutes later, and another surge hit. My midwife scrambled to find her phone, and after much of, where is my phone? Where is it? Oh, it's in the car. She let her partner midwife know that I was in labour, and she rang the hospital to let them know the same. And they were in disbelief. They were like, what? Over the next 2 hours, I laboured leaning over the hard wooden frame of my bed on my knees, eventually with a pillow under my knees. I was laughing and I was so joyful. I was so happy. The second midwife arrived and my toddler soon stumbled out from her nap, a little bit dazed and confused, upon seeing me doing breathing and settled on the bed in front of me. She acted like my little doula. She was mimicking my breaths and eventually my noises as they got lower and lower. Those two, she enjoyed sitting beside the second midwife, dictating drawings to be done, but not shared. Her presence didn't irritate me or annoy me or distract me. I actually enjoyed having her around. I felt really free to labour knowing my big girls are out the back with their beloved grandparents and my husband and toddler were with me. All the people that I love the most were surrounding me. My husband offered me ice chips at one point, to which I gratefully accepted, and my midwife suggested that I take off my harem pants, to which I said to her, "What? Why?" And her reply was, "Well, you'll be meeting your baby soon, of course." At this point, I still had pants on, leaning over the back of the bed, like fully clothed. I was just so deliriously happy that I was in labour, so I didn't actually give a shit about those details. She told me that she could see the line lengthening up my buttocks, which is a way to tell of dilation. And I laughed, saying, "Talk about this timing, this baby." And I continued to breathe through surges, rocking on my knees forward over the end of the bed while still having my back rubbed, sometimes being reminded to keep my voice low. When I'm in labour and my voice gets high, I know that that's my kind of indication for me personally that I know that I'm not focusing, and that's kind of it's like I don't really think labour hurts specifically. It's never really hurt me, but when my voice gets higher, I feel more out of control, whereas when I'm able to really direct my voice really low, it feels productive and it feels helpful, and so that's
And can you self-regulate that, or someone coaches you?
Yeah. Remember my husband actually saying to me, "Keep it low, babe, keep it low." And I was like, I'd go from to it felt really, really good.
So was it quite intense? Like from that Clary Sage moment in the 3 minutes, it just got really intense. Yeah.
Well, it's like all my natural labours, they've been 3.5 hours or less. So, you know, they've all been fairly swift, thank Christ, after long pregnancies. So at this point I was like, I sporadically vomited into the bucket, but it didn't bother me. It felt really good, cleansing and cathartic. And as the intensity grew, my noises grew louder but lower. The pool was almost filled and I wanted to get in. I asked my midwife if it was much longer, and she reassured me that it wouldn't be. So I only really get in the pool with my labours when I'm ready to push, basically. I like to kind of be on earth when I'm labouring so I can move around and not slip and have something solid to lean into and push against. But when I'm ready to push, I want to be in the pool. And so as I got into the pool, I whipped off my knickers and I leaned over the edge into my husband's arms. The pool felt warm and safe, cradling me, similar to how my husband's arms make me feel. He held me, and the weight of the pool, apparently, because I was leaning so hard into him that I was making the water pour out over the edge. I'd find out later that he was actually completely saturated and needed a new I asked my midwife to shut the bedroom door. The toddler was outside with her sisters and grandparents, and I could hear them play fighting, and I didn't want their noise to trigger or stagger my labour. Soon after, I explained to my midwife that I was done and I couldn't do this much longer, and I'm not going to be done soon. This bit sucks. And she reassured me that it wouldn't be long at all and that I was doing beautifully. Sure enough, she was right, and I began soon grunting, "I need to poo, I need to poo." My right leg was propped up, and I made a few more grunty noises. I recognised this as the baby was moving into the birthing canal, and I was encouraged to feel between to see if I could feel her head. I'd never actually done this before, so this was really amazing that I could do this. I'd never felt that in between. It's the most incredible in between period. So at the first feel, I couldn't really feel anything, but after another surge hit and I grunted my way through it, I could definitely feel something. It felt smooth, but it wasn't a head. It felt like a bubble, and I remember saying, "It's a bubble. I can feel a bubble." And she told me that was my baby's head inside the sack of water. It was just so amazing. It was seriously, between two worlds, between the birth, being pregnant and being born. It was just a really amazing thing to feel. I got into a squat position as the next surge hit, and I grunted and breathed my way through it, feeling absolutely everything about it to manage the tightness in my belly, my back, the way it shivered up my belly and peaked, and then as it petered out, it was amazing. I really, with my labours, part of me managing it and part of me being able to do it so well is that I don't fight it, I just feel it all. And because there is no deflection and because there is no pushing away, it just kind of is way less scary, I guess, and way more manageable. And so I welcome it, and and then it was just incredible. And so soon after, I felt the familiar ring of fire, and I was like, "Ouch, the head's coming." and instinctively I leaned backwards with my hand on the base of the pool and my feet apart. As the head was born, I felt her waters break simultaneously, and her shoulders were then born too. My body then ever so generously gave me a minute or so reprieve from surges, so I was actually able to sit back and watch as my baby was half womb side and half earth side floating between my legs. It was just so amazing. Like, it was like I'm almost done being pregnant and she's almost here, and it was just this limbo between worlds. It was just so amazing.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, you couldn't even probably describe that in words, could you?
Just so amazing. It was just so amazing. And another surge hit, and then I pushed her out entirely into my hands and pulled her immediately onto my chest. She was slippery, blue, and she was covered in vernix. And I quickly yelled out for my girls to come in. And then there they were watching as I exclaimed, "I did it. It's over. The baby's here. The baby finally decided to come. It's done. I did it." My midwives marvelled at her vernix-coated head, back, arms and neck, and also at the pool's water. There was not a single trace of meconium present. They congratulated me, and my midwife quickly rang the hospital to tell them I had birthed, only to be met with the disbelief on the other end of the phone. Already? Meanwhile, I was in absolutely euphoric, high as a kite on, like, hormones. Within seconds, my gorgeous husband, 3 daughters and mother-in-law were all beside me, and I sat in the pool holding my new baby, eyes all wide with amazement and awe. A few minutes passed, and I decided to get out of the pool to birth my placenta. I actually have done this with all my home births. My bum and back just get really sore, and I don't like being in the pool. I kind of feel cold in the pool, and I really just like to be in bed to birth my placenta. And I wanted to get warm. I carried my beautiful vernixy baby a few steps onto my bed, where I was boosted with pillows and covered in a towel to keep me warm. My baby was pinking up beautifully and quickly. By now, only her little feet were a tiny bit blue. My midwife suggested I check the sex, and I quickly moved her cord out of the way and exclaimed, "It's a girl. I knew it." And I snuggled my baby to my chest. My toddler sat beside me in bed, stroking my arm and cooing over her new baby's sister. It was so cute. Within a few more minutes, I felt the familiar urge to push, and I birthed my placenta in one big gush, and it was incredible. It was perfectly formed, no grit or calcification, just incredibly ripe and amazing. The cord had stopped pulsating by now, and my husband cut it. I lay in bed with my beautiful new baby. Actually, with my husband cutting it, he'd never cut my cord before ever. The hospital cut my first one with my first daughter, and my midwives did it for the other ones. The other one, I had a lotus birth and I have a daughter. My husband cut it, and I lay in bed with my beautiful new baby for the next hour or so, where she had her first few breastfeeds as my birth support team went about tidying up, siphoning out the pool water into the garden, putting towels in the washing machine, dimming the lights. My mother-in-law, amazing woman that she is, got my big girls ready for bed and fed and bathed in the pajamas. And we rewarded my amazing midwives with tea and carrot cake, which they were very thankful for. But I declined any food. I wasn't hungry, and I could feel after pains coming on. After pains were actually something I was dreading, because with my third pregnancy, I wasn't really prepared for them after my third labour, and they really kind of shook me a bit. So this time I already had Panadeine Fort on hand, and I took some, and it didn't take long to kind of kick in at all, and I got a heat pack, and I was supported by my mother-in-law to have a shower, which felt fantastic.
So you think that helped with the
Yeah. Well, with my third daughter, like, I remember having after pains, and as Chris was getting the girls to sleep, and I remember having this newborn baby in my arms, and the house was dark and quiet, and I was having these pains, and I had nothing for them, and I couldn't really move, and it was just really horrible. Like, it was just one experience, one part of an amazing birth that I was just like, oh, this is shit, and I can't do anything about it. So I wanted to feel more prepared for this time, so I don't have drugs in my labour, but I like them for after pains.
Yeah. The after pains is kind of like the dark side of
exactly.
Post-birth. It's like this creepy thing that comes up on you, and it's like, oh.
Exactly. Turns out when we so I took some Panadeine and I got a heat pack, and I was supported by my mother-in-law to have a shower. I remember she lathered me up with like lemongrass soap, and that's the smell that I relate to my youngest daughter's birth now. Like whenever I smell that, I'm brought back to that moment, and it was just really beautiful. I felt quite weak though. It had been a quick labour, but at the same time not too quick. It was about 2.5 hours, but it only took 12 minutes for the clary sage to kick in and 7 minutes from when I was fully dilated to when I birthed my baby.
Wow.
So that was full on, but it was just incredible. My beautiful mother-in-law then helped me into fresh pajamas while my husband had his first cuddle of Nell, our youngest, along with my midwife, and they dressed her and wrapped her and passed her back to me after I'd made my way back to bed. They also weighed her, and she was exactly 9 pounds, which wasn't actually my biggest baby.
What was your biggest?
10 pounds.
Wow.
10 pounds. That was my 43.5 weeker.
Yeah, 10 pounds exactly?
Exactly. Yep,
Wow.
and then 9 pounds exactly.
Wow.
Littlest baby was only, so that's pretty big, really. But no, I just cook them. I bid farewell to my midwives. My husband and I said goodbye to his parents and thanked them so much for everything they'd done. We'd see them tomorrow, but for now we were really keen to get the girls into bed so we can snuggle into bed together with our newest addition. Once they were asleep, my husband joined me and Nell in bed, and we just chatted and ogled at her in absolute awe. Our last baby, our youngest daughter, was finally here. She was just so beautiful. She had like a swirl of hair on the back of her head, and she was just caked in vernix. It was just incredible. We chatted about the birth, and my amazing husband told me how wonderful and proud he was of me. Eventually, he drifted off to sleep. I really didn't sleep much that night. I pretty much stayed awake the whole night, staring in absolute bewilderment at my new baby, watching as she suckled my breast and slept against my chest. I sniffed her in. She smelt so amazing, so fresh and new. The journey that this baby had taken me on throughout my pregnancy and right up to her birth was like no other. Right when I had given up all hopes of birthing at home again in a loving, supporting environment, right when I had completely surrendered to whatever will be, she decided then to be born. She was born at 1 day shy of 44 weeks against so many odds, covered in vernix with clear waters. She was born at home surrounded by all the people that loved her the most. My baby clearly knew all along the exact perfect moment to be born, despite me even doubting her and myself. How much she taught me even at a few hours old. I really thought that by the 4th pregnancy I couldn't gain much more wisdom and understanding about pregnancy and birth and what it means to be a woman. It just goes to show that humans just never stop learning, and the best lessons are hidden in places that we are often too fearful or busy or too hesitant to explore. But when we do go there and we tread carefully, we emerge from the depths wholly new, empowered and enlightened. And she, my God, she just changed everything.
Wow. Thank you so much. I love especially sort of the end here that we've always got these lessons and especially coming into what it is to be a woman, and birth is just so different, and
it is.
Yeah, and we just the fact that you can sort of end that and know that you can be more empowered and more enlightened and more changed and more learned, and just by that beautiful story coming from someone that's, you know, having tanties and then just having this.
I know. I think as women, and I think as people in society, as humans, like we always push away discomfort. We always push away the shit that is just because it's just like, no, this is just, it's uncomfortable or it's tricky and it doesn't feel good. And so our instinct is to shove away discomfort and move it. Whereas a lot of the time when we kind of welcome it and are able to just sit with it and kind of just be with it, that's where real lessons and unfolding comes, because once you've experienced something, then that's it. And then it folds on and flows on. So I think, you know, especially women in pregnancies, when they are finally, they spend all their time, I'm not going to do this and this will be fine, or I'll try this and this, that and the other. When you just kind of can just be and just stop and just let it settle, that's when the rest of the really awesome stuff kind of comes.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, and I just listening to this story too, it's like, it's kind of like you explored all those things that, you know, that can eventuate, and felt them and just had a look at what they could look like, and allowing your body to feel those things and go through that and not block yourself and like, no, I won't look at that because I want to do this. And, you know,
exactly.
You know, you really need to sort of have those feelings and go through those feelings to come out of it the other side, having learned lessons.
Valid. They're all part of the journey, you know, and it's part of it, and like they're going to be there whether you kind of face them and look at them or not, you know. And if you don't look at them, then it just gets harder.
Yeah. So what's your theory? Like, I just see that you have all these crazy long pregnancies and these super quick births. It's like you have your labour is like maybe most of your early labour and active labour is like this like mental testing for you and testing all these things and learning all these lessons, and then it's like, okay, you're ready, boom, here's the baby.
Yeah. I'm like, crap, why does it have to? I thought I already knew all this shit. Why do I have to?
Yeah, why am I going through it again?
No, but it's just amazing. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, in terms of pregnancies and stuff, there really just is not one size fits all. Every woman, every baby, every pregnancy, every dynamic, every diet, it's all different and it's all unique. And so putting on this big one size fits all in terms of 40 weeks being the due date or like 42 weeks, you know, and all this stuff, like, it just is not helpful. Like, it's just not helpful, and it doesn't make sense, because women and humans, we are all unique, and people are just they don't fit into they just don't fit into that mold. Like, they are all going to do their own weird thing, because that's what it is to be a human, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you can't base a sort of system or a model around like a set list of what normal is, because you need to be flexible, and that's when a really good midwife can come into that and you know, navigate for you, support you, and you know, it just seems like your midwife did all those things.
My midwife is amazing, but a lot of it, most of it, like I'm not no discounting her at all, but a lot of the stuff that was the real crux of it, it was trusting instinct, it was trusting gut, it was trusting, do I actually feel okay? Am I feeling okay with this stuff? Because people are stressing about the dates and stuff. Is that actually, or do I actually feel okay? Am I thinking about really connecting in with what's actually going on, rather than other people's perceived ideas and, you know, suggestions and stuff. So
absolutely. And you know, it just gets harder and harder for women to get to that point, and this is why I was so excited. Yeah.
Really tiring when women have to fight for so much shit that just really shouldn't be having a fight over, especially when they are emotionally sensitive and really receptive to negative crap. When you're pregnant, you're like a big sponge, and when someone's around you who's being negative, you take that on, whether even if you don't even feel it or not. So women, you know, it's exhausting, and I think that's why I chose to birth my other 3 babies at home, because I didn't want to have that fight. I didn't want to have to justify myself. I wanted to surround myself with women and people who understood normal birth and normal labour and respected it.
Yeah, that's right. And then the decisions you made weren't barraged with judgment or anything that made you feel that inferior feeling. It was like, okay, that's your decision, and you know. And
it was case by case. It was just for me.
Yeah, day by day. Yeah, it certainly would have been day by day after 43 weeks, I'm sure.
Yeah, half day by half day.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I just can't wait to share this, because it is so important that we share these stories so that others can see how diverse. I'm sure like there is so many women that are over 40 weeks that will listen to this and hopefully get a little bit of hope that they're nearly there.
Look, you know, it's something I'm really passionate about, and you know, I only wish that I'd had the wisdom to be able to be aware of it when I was pregnant with my first. And you know what? It's just women, they are so capable, and they know what they're doing, and their bodies are perfect. They don't need help with stuff unless there is an actual medical, you know, dysfunction going on. You know, healthy women, healthy babies, they can do this. They have that. They just have to trust it.
Yes, well said. Thank you, Jessica.
You're welcome.
Your website is GirlTribe.net. Where you have an awesome array of blogs and information. And there's one here that's called A Shout Out to All the Women Love Their Births, which is a little great post that you've written. I'd love to share that. So I'll definitely share that and link to all your contacts so people could...
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I also... I write for KidSpot as well, so often you'll have articles, stuff birth stuff and parenting stuff that will come up too. So they get linked through my Facebook page.
Excellent. I think this article is linked through KidSpot too, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Okay.
Cool.
All right. Lovely to talk to you, and big thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you connect with this episode? Then head over to our website, circleofbirth.com. There you'll find show notes, pictures, resources, and potentially connect with today's storyteller. Don't forget to sign up to be updated with new empowering episodes and content. Help the show grow by contributing a tip in the jar to make sure we can continue to better the podcast and connect more and more to the wisdom of birth and each other. Hey, and don't forget the iTunes rating. This has been another episode of the Birth Share Project. We breathe, we birth, we empower.